Welcome back to Mark Alba's Vlog, everyone. Thanks for joining in on this, well, beautiful day. Maybe not as much. It's only 5 degrees Celsius and the wind's blowing like crazy. And once you're around the corner here, you're gonna see it's actually extremely windy, trees blowing, and the hair is gonna blow too. But that's not the point. I wanna update you guys. Yesterday, I posted a video on Exotic Car Play Place, and I'm gonna share the link at the end. So be sure to check into that if you're interested in what I was talking about. Some cars that have such horrible gas engines that they should be electric. Now, I know there was a lot of great conversation and a lot of great viewership on that video, but there was also, I believe, some people that maybe didn't quite understand the context of the video. And I am truly one of the last persons to advocate for electric vehicles. There's many reasons for that, and I want to share with you guys some of the reasons why I don't particularly like electric vehicles. I think they're a disaster, I think they're a mess, I think they're a safety hazard, and quite frankly, there's a whole host of other issues which we'll talk about. But I want to update you on a few things that have been happening in the last couple of weeks. Number one is the F Type, and of course, here, let's round the corner and you'll see we've got the F Type here. We just had it serviced, and you know, in that last video that I talked about some of the things, you know, the service costs and whatnot, I actually had an issue with the start-stop system on this vehicle. As a lot of you all know, that's not a system that we all love. Stopping this thing at a red light and then having it start up automatically is a disaster. It's a mess, and quite frankly, I think it's rough on the equipment. So personally, I like to disable it. But I had a problem with it not working. And the only reason I had an issue with that is because I believe everything should function on my vehicle. I'm one of those people, a little anal that way, and even though it's a crappy feature, I still wanted it working, just to be able to disable it. But either way, that actually has now decided to start working. So I don't know if it's the moderate increase in temperature. The temperature hasn't gotten that much warmer here, although we're up about 10 degrees what we were the week before. So possibly there was a shift, and maybe that has affected this. Now, I know that the conditions, the computer in these cars has to look at a bunch of things. It needs ambient temperature, vehicle temperature, battery state of charge. There's a bunch of things that have to go on. There have to be so many miles traveled for that to even function. And I thought we met all that criteria in previous drives, and it didn't work. Lo and behold, it's working today. I haven't done anything different, haven't changed any batteries. So we'll see, and I'll let you know. I'll keep you up to date. Maybe we've got a glitch, an electrical gremlin. Hey, it's a British car. Lo and behold, maybe that's just part and parcel. Either way, that's functioning. Now what we have here is the Mercedes. And I want to show you something that we dealt with here in this last week. This car, we're loving it so far. My wife's enjoying it. She primarily uses it, but often when we go out on the weekends, I typically drive. She parks herself in the passenger seat, and off we go. Well, we were driving this wonderful car in the west end of the city here, and as you can see, we have a lot of garbage roads in the city like that, potholes, cracks, lots of damaging roadways. And quite frankly, it's very frustrating because when you drive a half-decent car, it burns you to the soul, and it actually just makes you grit your teeth every time you run over a crack or a bump. And we happen to do that with this. I was driving the car a couple of weeks back, and I went over a set of train tracks that we know historically are some of the smoother tracks in the city, but for some reason, I must have hit it the wrong way, and all of a sudden, bang, I heard a strange banging noise. I don't know what it was, but after we got home, I noticed a couple of things. I mean, there is this beautiful car. I always love the looks of this thing, and truly, I would recommend the C300 for those that understand what owning and operating a luxury car means, but yet don't necessarily want to go fully committed into a twin turbo V8 that you'll find in the upper scale cars. Anyway, right here, you'll notice you have this rocker panel down here. Now here, metal. Down here, plastic. Now that panel is obviously fastened. There must be screws and bolts and all kinds of clips that hold that on. Well, when we got home, we noticed this gap. This gap was different all the way along here. There's a wider space right here than there was at the back, and it made me wonder. Immediately, I thought something broke loose there. That rocker panel actually did. But I'll show you another issue I found. Let's go in here. And right there, you'll notice there's a speaker on the door. There's a speaker on both sides like that. Very nicely integrated to the door panel. Same thing here. But what we found was this speaker was inside the door, so no longer sat nice and flush like this. It was actually fallen into the door panel, the door cavity, if you will. Made me wonder what the heck is going on there. So two things that popped out literally, I'm assuming both from that little incident. And it wasn't even that hard of a hit. Like I said, it was more of a gradual transition. It wasn't the tracks weren't all that exposed. So the one thing that I concluded, in my opinion, was that these cars are a little fragile, is probably the best thing I would say. And I think I've said that before. I found generally, even when you close the doors, they don't sound as robust as some of the older cars that we've typically owned. I mean, it's a beautiful car. We're still enjoying it. I don't have a lot of other things to report on the Benz, but I will say it does feel fragile. Be careful. Watch those potholes. Watch those bumps. Things can pop loose. Things can break. So we took the vehicle to the dealer. They fixed it all up, popped the speaker in. They said they refastened the rocker panel, and life is good. And they said that's all they did. Fortunately, no costs out of our pocket, covered under warranty, and life goes on. But it does make me wonder. So that was one of the issues that we contended with. Also, what we had this last weekend, my son, we took a trip out to Grand Prairie, Alberta. We had a big hockey tournament there. I posted it on Facebook. My son just knocked it out of the park. 5 games, about 15 points. He did a great job. Lots of goals, lots of assists. We ended up not winning. We lost the last game. We won every game up to the 5th game, and we lost in the finals. But that was a great little getaway. I really needed it for my own mental sanity and just to get away, enjoy some time with my wife and my son. And that's really all it was. Spent some time in a hotel room, and some greasy breakfasts, and off to the races we went. So that was last weekend, and now we're back here enjoying the cars again. So this brings me to the topic about the idea of electrified vehicles and what the future looks like that for us. As a matter of fact, our federal government has been providing incentives to buy electric vehicles. They've done that for a couple of years, $5,000 towards the price of a brand new vehicle. Now, apparently the latest budget, they're pumping that up to, I believe I heard, about $8,000. So they're calling it incentive. I call it a bribe, because actually a lot of people are getting pulled into that and they're getting sucked in and they think they're doing the right thing for the environment. And quite frankly, you can't blame them. I mean, the marketing is a powerful machine and the marketers are great and the government's bearing down on all of us. And everywhere you look, there's more conversation around environment and doing all the right things, make the right decisions, get rid of your gas guzzling, oil burning ICE engines. They're just nothing but horrifying. It's funny how they were the greatest thing since sliced bread, and now all of a sudden all these marketers and politicians and canvassers are all pushing this garbage down our throat and now forcing us to either make the decision to get full electric, or we're the dirty hooligans and pirates that are resisting change. But quite frankly, I'm not quite ready to get there yet. So in the end of the video, again, I'll post the link, but really what I was talking about was some 5 current ICE vehicles that their engines are so horrifyingly bad that you might as well go electric in those vehicles. And I wasn't suggesting that I like electric. As a matter of fact, I would only use an electric vehicle in one circumstance. It was my 2nd or 3rd or 4th vehicle, and it was strictly a commuter, because that would never satisfy the driving excitement that I get from an internal combustion engine type vehicle. Now, while sure, there's lots of videos out there that show how fast they are, and I saw Grand Tour, and they did a drag race between the X Type and as well as an R8. And it whooped the pants off the R8. But did you hear that R8? The way it sounds with that glorious V10? The Tesla just whistled along. And while there's some gadgets and it's cool and it's nifty, it's still not quite the same thing. So again, I'm not saying never go electric, but I'm saying it could never replace my ICE engines. It could only augment, possibly as a commuter. And so that's where I was going with that video, was those gas engines were so bad. And the first one I'll give you a hint is a BMW N54, that trashy twin turbo 6-cylinder engine is so bad that you should have just put an electric motor in it just to simplify some of your problems. I mean, what's not to love about an internal combustion engine, especially one like this that's tucked under these hoods? The wonderful F Type here. There really is almost nothing like this. They snap, crackle, pop, make all kinds of fun noises, and you combine that with 550 plus horsepower in the V8 versions. And what else do you possibly need for a street-driven car? It excites. And actually, the other day I had my car parked and I was sitting there having a casual coffee, and I was sitting there for about 45 minutes, and there was a construction zone off in the clear blue yonder. And it's funny, I literally could see probably about 15 to 20 different construction people walking back and forth. Every one of them gawked at the car, like constantly did this like full look back, and they couldn't get enough of the car, and they were just gawking and loving the way these cars look, because they're not only unoffensive, but everybody loves the cars. They're not pretentious, they're beautiful. And how can you possibly replace this with a Tesla Model 3? Anyway, I digress. But here you go with that wonderful V8, 5 liters supercharged, 550 ponies, absolutely magnificent animal. There's no way an electric vehicle could fully replace this in my opinion. How about this one? How about the V10? This is also a collectible, in my opinion, a keeper engine all day long. And again, as I said, I'm not a BMW fan anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm literally trying to get rid of the X5 right here, which we've talked about in previous videos, certainly on my other channel. A lot of you guys are starting to see me talk about that vehicle, and I'm trying to sell it. It's literally currently on the classifieds, trying to get this thing gone, so we'll see how that works out. This one's not worth the hassle. This one is worth the hassle just because of that magnificent V10. You'll never see this again, and that's why this car is still sitting in the garage. Still debating sending it to the chopping block, but for now, it's just so glorious. Just that drivetrain. That's really the only reason to even look at this car. And sadly, every M5 now uses the same stapled together cookie cutter engine. They're getting X5M, X6M, M5s. What's the point? They're all the same. That's not original, that's not unique. That's like a Lamborghini with the V12. It's got its own signature. Same with some of the V10s in the Lamborghini, although they're starting to get spread around too. But either way, they're a little more unique to that vehicle. Whereas the M vehicles now, they're just spreading that around like cottage cheese, and it's just quite frankly not special anymore. Anyway, back to the point of this conversation, and really what I'm talking about is the problems with electrification. People aren't seeing this, they're not getting it. There's a ton of reasons why electric vehicles aren't really the go-to, in my opinion. And it's not just because my passion for the vehicle. I mean, to hear a high-revving V10 or a high-revving V12 engine or that supercharged V8 that has that punch and snap, it's more than just the passion that I have, that all you guys have, because clearly you followed the channel because you have similar passions for the vehicles. And that's why you guys are all listening in on this. And this is where I'm coming from. It goes beyond just a passion. Think about the emergency response workers. Think about the firefighters that have to save somebody from a car that's in a bad collision that's on fire. You can't turn that off. Like a gas vehicle, you can turn the gas off. You can shut off the fuel. As a matter of fact, most vehicles have an automatic shutoff in the trunk or near the tank when a vehicle's in a collision. That doesn't happen in most cases with these electric vehicles, and these batteries pose a hazard to anybody working on them. Once that vehicle starts on fire, if those batteries ignite, that's a huge potential issue for emergency response workers. That itself is an ugly one, and I don't know how you get around that. It's also not a DIY friendly thing. I mean, you get under the hood and they run a higher voltage, and you can't isolate it so easily. And for a non-trained person, forget it, it's hands off. Another thing that should be mentioned, and by the way, before I get into that, thanks Wayne, I appreciate your conversation on that. You did trigger me, and I thought I'd mention this in this video today because it's really more than just those factors. I mean, look at here. Here you got the wonderful gas cap. What does it take? 10 seconds to open that. Takes you about 2 minutes to fill this up, plug the nozzle in there, fill it up with gas, and away you go. That is the problem with the electric vehicles, and everybody knows this. I mean, it's been a conversation for the last 5 years plus, is not just the poor range that a lot of these have, 200, 300 miles. It's the fact that it takes you 2 hours, 3 hours or more to charge that vehicle. So if you want to take a trip across the country, you have to be very strategic, plan your trips. You're very limited. You might only be able to go half as far as you normally would if you're on an ICE. So in terms of a scheduling perspective, you don't have the time. If you say have a week to travel across the country, you may not be able to make it. You have to travel, you have to schedule your trips accordingly. So it's far less practical if you're trying to get somewhere in a reasonable time frame. We also can't forget about some of the problems that we're getting with shorting out batteries, overloading or overcharging batteries, and we're starting to see that. The Chevy Bolt is getting cooked, and they're struggling with the recall on that. As well, the BMW X5, you know, the 40e version, where we actually have some Samsung batteries that are internally failing because there's particulate within the actual cells that are causing excess heating. We're also having issues, we're starting to see issues in some Teslas, and a lot of the vehicles, you're starting to get some problems with vehicles that are burning, spontaneously roasting. A lot of times it's while they're parked inside a customer's garage. That's terrifying to me. You're charging it and all of a sudden, boof, you know, this thing goes up in flames. That is a serious issue. To me, it is. Another thing we really can't forget, and I think it's important to know that these batteries are lasting 10 to 12 years, depending on the manufacturer. That's wonderful. And a lot of people only run their vehicles that long, or maybe 5 years. But what does that mean for that vehicle after 5 or 6 years? So that first person's gonna buy it, they're gonna pay a lot of money for that car. Is it even worth the risk buying that vehicle secondhand? I mean, if you get yourself a great ICE vehicle, for example, think about a Toyota Camry. You buy that, you could change hands 5 times, you could run that vehicle up to 300, 400,000 miles all day long and not worry about it. It'll run. But if you get an electric vehicle, when you know you have those batteries that are imminent to be changed, that gets costly. You also can't troubleshoot or fix anything. And did you know a lot of these vehicles now, only the dealer, or like Tesla, for example, are the only people that can exclusively work on that vehicle? Well, and I know a lot of you folks out there aren't necessarily do-it-yourselfers, and that's fine. However, it doesn't even give you the option. You got to have that Tesla buggy show up at your driveway to try to troubleshoot that vehicle, and it's all electronics. I mean, a lot of people truly believe that going pure electric takes out all these other problems from the equation. I mean, we talk about a lot of the BMW issues, the X5 I've had, a lot of mechanical related issues, but don't kid yourself. You're just adding twice, 4, 10 times the amount of computing power to get an electric vehicle running down the road. You think that's going to be any simpler? It means lots more computer modules, more boards, more chips, and a lot more potential failures in other ways. You won't be changing a water pump, you might be changing out a computer board. And it will be equate to the same kind of money, but the difference is you won't be able to even figure it out or troubleshoot it yourself. That's where some of the problems lie, in my opinion. So you're essentially buying an obsolete piece of junk right out of the hop. I mean, it's okay if you lease it. It's no different than a BMW. Everybody says, lease a BMW, own a Lexus. That's true. But when you buy a Tesla or a car like that, I guarantee it's definitely on borrowed time. And I would say a lease is definitely the way to go, but you wouldn't even consider necessarily owning it for more than 5 or 6 years, because once you're off of that warranty period, I've heard some horror stories already of customers having to pay significant dollars to have that trouble shot. And another thing, the elephant in the room is, I want to let you guys in on a little tidbit. I actually have an electrical engineering background, so I want to shed that piece of information. And what we have right behind the camera is this. And all of you probably know what this is. It's a big green box, and a lot of people think, oh, it's a power box. Well, what this is a transformer. High voltage right there, you'll notice it has all these warning signs on it, and it's humming. That's a transformer. That takes your 14,400 volts and it steps this down into a 600 347 volt power range, which then is transformed further down for the use of receptacles, switches, lights, things like that. But what I'm getting at is the power that it takes to charge your batteries for your cars. Now that's great, you can upgrade your power supply. Yeah, you maybe have a 100 amp service coming to your house. You know, you can sometimes get that upgraded, but what if every one of your neighbors does the same thing? Do you think the whole grid, the power grid, can support and sustain even every second house having an electric vehicle plugging in at 5 p.m. when you show up from work at the end of the day? I think not. That's not going to happen. I don't see anybody here building any further generation plants. I don't see any further development of transmission or distribution facilities. All I see is more talk and more rhetoric about electric vehicles and the sales. Really, it's going to boil down to, we don't have the capacity. We're talking about brownouts. We're already overloaded as it is. People put in hot tubs and air conditioners. That consumes power. Then add on to your Tesla as you roll up at the end of the day. What do you think that's going to mean for the overall power consumption? It's not sustainable at this point. I just don't see how it's going to work. I mean, there could be load shedding, and I know there's component devices that you can install in your house where it detects maybe when you're using a stove, then it swings over and feeds the power to the stove, and when you let off there, then it swings the power back over to the car charger, and it can do that back and forth. But that's only within your home. I mean, the demand is still going to be high across the grid, and the systems just aren't there to support it. It's just not practical. Hydrogen powered, maybe a combination of ICE, maybe a combination of electric. I think it's great to look at technology, and I've said before, for a daily commuter, I wouldn't necessarily be against it, but there's no way on this God's green earth, or yellow earth, that an electric vehicle would replace my ICE vehicle. Again, as I promised you, there's the link right there. You're going to want to check it out if you want to understand some of the vehicles that actually should be electric because the gas engines were so terrible. And at the very least, thank you very much if you're a current subscriber, and if you're not, please be sure to smack that subscribe button down there. I'd love for you to join the community of Mark Holubitz, the vlog. Hope to see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.